Hello and welcome to Cryptid by Region, Madagascar. Our trek around the world continues for yet another month. It was really debatable for me this week to figure out which region we'd be looking at. Let's just say the title of this video switched back and forth at least 3 times. While this location doesn't have an extremely long list of cryptids, and actual written encounters are scarce, what it makes up for this is with some really weird creatures. Not to mention that a lot of them fall into the category of known to exist, but are now considered extinct. We don't venture into that territory too often. So join me on our road trip as we make the long journey from our previous location of Indonesia and head to the island country of Madagascar. Madagascar has a very long history, but as for its earliest beginnings, it is still shrouded in mystery. There are many debates over when people originally began living on the island, but from what is known, the Malagasy people originated from the Austronesian explorers traveling from Indonesia. The people began establishing settlements on the southeastern coast, and over time eventually moved inward. In the 7th century, the Omani Arabs came to the land and established trading posts in the northwest. These buildings would serve a very important role as a port for the trade route known as the Silk Road. Not only this, but they also wrote down the Malagasy language and established the Sarabi alphabet. New Austronesian people landed on the northwest and east coast of the island and set up different sects which were known as clans. This would include the Malays, Havanese, Bugis, and Orang Laut. Europeans were aware of the island's existence via communication with Arab communities. In 1666, the Director General of the French East India Company landed on the island but failed to establish a settlement. Interestingly, there are legends that have yet to be proven that a French captain named James Misson established a pirate utopia called Libertalia on the nearby Isle Sainte-Marie in the 17th century, along with his crew of pirates. While many believe pirates did establish these safe havens, evidence has yet to prove outside of word of mouth that Libertalia actually existed on the island. As time marched on, the people started to establish kingdoms, with the most prominent being known as the Betsilio. Under the rule of Radama I, the kingdoms were unified, and in 1817, Madagascar was known as the Kingdom of Madagascar. This monarchy stayed in power until a battle with France erupted and was known as the Franco-Hova War. By 1896, the French Parliament decided to annex Madagascar, and in doing so, it exiled the one-time ruling family. Jumping ahead in 1956, France established the Loi Québécoise reform, which did many things, including the possibility for Madagascar to become independent. On October 14, 1958, the Malagasy Republic declared that they were an autonomous state of France. However, on March 26, 1960, France officially declared Madagascar to be fully independent. As of the flag, it is very straightforward in appearance. It was first designed a week after the Malagasy Republic declared their intentions of becoming independent. The white stripe, as always, stands for purity, and the red is for sovereignty. The green stripe is said to represent the coastal regions and is also meant to symbolize hope. Although it should be noted that others state that the red and white symbolize the Merina Kingdom, and the green represented the largest class of peasants on the island, known as the Hova. Okay, on to the cryptids. As mentioned previously, Madagascar has quite a few unique cryptids, but the issue you'll find with these tales is that actual eyewitness reports are extremely hard to come by. I assume this makes sense, due to the island being still largely unexplored. As such, I will do my utmost best to provide you with as much information as I can possibly find. I think the best place to start would be with a couple of creatures that normally would be considered common if it weren't for 0 populations ever known to be existing on the island. The first of which would be the being known as the Malagasy lion. While in Madagascar on October of 1939, a writer for the Chasseurs Français was approached with a story about a civil engineer simply known as Mr. Bellamy. In his tale, he stated that the locals had mentioned encounters with a maned beast that resembled a lion. The creature was said to make its home in the unexplored parts of the island and lived in the caves. Not only did this animal attack the livestock and leave the remains of bodies of jungle animals, it was also known to stalk the villages and attack the people. While descriptions are scant, it was thought to be possibly a living saber-toothed cat. What really makes these stories weird is the fact that there is no known species of big cats living on the island. Another similar being would be the one known as the Antamba. Now, this cryptid is more commonly known as a giant fossa. Interestingly, this area does have a weird animal called the fossa, and it typically is 4 to 5.5 feet long. It resembles a long-tailed puma and is carnivorous. What is odd is that even though you should be seeing pictures of this being, it is actually part of the mongoose family. Now, this animal is a known species, but there are tales about a giant one roaming about. Fossil records do prove that a giant species did exist, but it was long thought extinct. Even as such, sightings became so widespread that in the late 1600s, Admiral Etienne de Flacourt, who was the governor of Madagascar, went in search of the Antamba. Reports claimed it was as large as a big dog, had a round head, resembled a leopard, and was known to kill cattle and humans. Then in November of 1999, a man named Luc Dollar, who was an expert in the fossa, ventured into Madagascar's Zahamena National Park, which was known as the Impenetrable Forest, in search of this elusive beast. As such, he was unable to gather any evidence of the creature. Keeping with this type of being is the one known as the Kilu Pilu Pisufi. Quite a name, huh? This being is said to be seen around the Belo Sumer villages, with tales existing since the 1600s to present. In 1995, scientist David A. Burney was told stories about a strange creature that had been seen by several people, including a man named Jean Nolson Pascal. He stated that in 1976 he witnessed a creature that was the size of a hornless cow, had long floppy ears, its skin was a dark color, and had pink-hued flesh around its eyes and mouth. It was also said to have large flat feet, big teeth, was a nocturnal, and that it could dive into the water if startled. When David asked if it made any sounds, Jean proceeded to make a sound that was a deep, drawn-out grunt. What was astonishing with all of this is that his description and the call resembled that of an African hippo. What made this weirder is the fact that hippos didn't live on the island. Or should I say, they didn't live on the island anymore. Much like our previous sightings, the fossil record does indicate that 3 species of dwarf hippo did call the island home, but they were believed to be extinct by at least 1,000 years. To add to this, German naturalist Josef Peter Odbert was said to have been presented with the alleged skin of one of these creatures in 1876, and it was said to make its home in the southern part of the island. Sadly, this skin wasn't preserved, so it is no longer around today. Before moving on, I would like to mention the interesting and very familiar animal known as the Mangarsahawk. Admiral de Flacourt wrote that the creature was white in color, was very large, had a rounded foot like a horse, long ears, made the sound of a donkey, and lived in the mountains and Ancazinia forest. In 1770, the French Count of Modave also wrote about this creature, in which he stated it frightened villagers, but it was simply a donkey that was rarely seen, since it lived in the forests. What truly makes this account odd is that there have never been any wild donkeys found on the island. Even weirder is the fact the hoof prints of this being were found, but the creature always eluded researchers. Now I know that you may be wondering, why were villagers afraid of a donkey? It was thought that the mere sight of one was an indicator of a bad omen. By this point, I can only imagine you all thinking, so we learned stories about a lion, hippo, donkey, and weasel. Is that the best it gets? Well, my dear viewers, now we start to get into the really strange stuff. In the Izalo Range, the Betsilio tribe claim that a strange beast roams about the land when night falls, and it is known as the Fotsiandre, or otherwise called the Habibi. This being is said to be basically a sheep man. It is rather tall, can walk on its hind legs, has shaggy wool like fur that can be either white, black, or brown, and typically has colored patches on it. It is said to have large bulging eyes, small floppy ears, a long muzzle, and has cloven hooves. The being is thought to live in caves during the daytime, and lucky for the residents, it appears to be content with simply eating plants. Due to its feet being hooves, I have to wonder if the prints researchers found of the donkey-like being we talked about previously, if they weren't actually belonging to this cryptid. Ending our list, we look at a being that has various descriptions. Not only this, but it also goes by quite a few names as well, but more commonly, it is called the Kalanoro. Traditionally, they were said to be almost a spirit that was a short, hairy humanoid with sharp fangs, red eyes, their feet faced backwards, and they were carnivorous. With them being viewed as a spirit, I have to wonder if it was actually meant as a spirit like a ghost, or a spirit like a protector of the forest. I'm not aware of too many ghosts who have, or better yet have use of, sharp fangs. Now, there is another interesting description that depicts them very much like a form of Sasquatch, only more monkey-like. Some reports claim that they are 4 to 5 feet tall, while others say that they can grow to be around 8 feet tall. In 1886, G. Herbert Smith was told stories about villagers encountering one of these beings while sitting around the fire. One night the person was laying down to sleep, watching the fire burn to embers. Suddenly he noticed a short being covered in hair with a long beard standing by the fire, trying to get warm. The person telling the story claimed that they moved suddenly, kicking up the embers, and it caused the creature to run away. Another tale says that a pair of these beings were seen venturing to a different fire, and even took to eating the unsecured food that had been left out. Now, as stated, this is one version of the description. I actually found an encounter first written about by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman. He wrote that a confidential source, who was part of a Navy SEAL team, was involved in covert operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo between 1997 and 2002. It was during this endeavor that he and his team witnessed 13 chimpanzee-like creatures that stood 4 to 5 feet tall on the beach of Madagascar. He said that they were covered in gray hair and oddly enough had a row of pronounced black quills running down the center of their backs. The beings were frantically jumping around as they were in the process of killing an animal. It was said that the more excited they got, the more the quills seemed to react. It was said that these beings were actually filmed for over 3 minutes before they vanished into the jungle. The tape showing this was confiscated by the military and was claimed to be classified due to the mission. Many people have issues with this story, but I do have to note that I saw other reports claiming that the Kalanoro had spines and 3-toed feet. A lot of people obviously link these beings to the famed chupacabra. Along with these reports, there are later claims that one of these creatures were killed and paraded around town, and at another point in time, one was captured alive and sent to a dignitary in France. As usual, I'll let you decide how you feel about these stories. As usual, I couldn't talk about every cryptid found here, but I have the honorable mentions section for that. Shockingly, Madagascar doesn't really have Sasquatch sightings outside of the creatures I talked about prior, although some descriptions technically fit. Not only this, but I didn't find dogman or lake monster sightings either. A real oddity, I know. However, there are various tales of giant birds. The first would be the creature known as the Vorompatra, which is said to be a giant flightless bird that can become aggressive, but it is utilized as a mainstay of meat for the villagers. Much like other stories, the real oddity here is that a bird like this did exist on the island and was said to become extinct in the 17th century. It is commonly known as the elephant bird. There are also reports of the mythical roc flying around, and it is said to be so large that it actually blocks out the sun. Oddly enough, these reports are even found in nearby Chile. Finally, for flying cryptids, there is said to be sightings of a giant bat that can reach the size of a golden eagle, and it is known as the Fangolobolo. In a weird twist, it is viewed as a protector of other small bats, and will actually wrap its wings around the group as they sleep, protecting them from would-be predators. Madagascar has many stories of giant lemur-like beings, with one being named the Kodoki, and it is said to have a human-like face. Some have even claimed that the infamous giant sloth can still be found wandering about the island. I saw mentions of a giant crocodile being seen, but no details or further information was available. Finally, we're going to look at, I don't know if I can call it a creature or not, but it is a topic that I've discussed quite a few times in the past. This would be the man-eating tree named the Yataveo. The story goes that a German explorer named Karl Lech traveled to the island and witnessed the Makoto tribe sacrificing one of the females from the village to this bloodthirsty tree. In his account, he went into great grisly details about what he saw and how the victim reacted when she was being consumed by the plant. Accordingly, this report was said to be sent to a man named Dr. Omelius Fridlowski, and it was then retold to various publications. Now, I include this on the list simply for the need to clarify something. First, I knew if I omitted it, I would see comments saying I missed it. Secondly, I wanted to let everyone know that this story, while widely talked about, is completely a hoax from 1874. Carl's name and spelling changed in various ways with each retelling, which is forgivable. But Carl never existed. Neither did the Makoto tribe or the venerable Dr. Fridlowski. Even though, after reading this story, many explorers traveled to the island in an attempt to hunt down this perplexing tree. Sadly, this story was discovered to be a hoax in 1888, and it was written by Edmund Spencer for the New York World paper. Yes, you heard that date right. This story was debunked in 1888, 133 years ago, yet it is still being spread around as truth today. If you are curious, yes, this even includes all the other man-eating tree stories, mainly focused in South America and South Africa. The story was so popular at the time that other papers took the idea and reprinted it along with their variations to the tale. In saying all this, I hope that if I played a role in the past of presenting this story without realizing the full story behind it, that this inclusion will clear me of that error. As always, remember to keep voting for which state you would like to see next in our Cryptid by State series. After last week's video, there were some interesting changes on the list, namely New Mexico jumping from being in the middle of the pack to just shy of the top 5. You are all doing a fantastic job of voting, and it truly makes each video exciting to see how the list will change. I must also say how thrilled I was with the reception to our Cryptid by State recap video last week. Normally, when I make really long videos, I either see low view numbers or low retention rates. However, you all shocked me with it being quite the opposite, and nearly 4,000 views. This means the world to me, and I can't truly thank you enough. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.